Picture this. You've just graduated flight school. You've made it through all the trials and tribulations, and you've pushed forward to your first combat aviation brigade. You've made it through progression, and you're now a full-fledged qualified pilot in the front seat. And then overnight, a MILPER message drops from HRC that will decide the fate on if you stay in Army aviation or reclass to a different branch altogether. That's what's going on right now in Army aviation with MILPER message 25-388, and we're going to cover the ins and outs of what this means for you as a future aviator in Army aviation. Hello everyone, I'm Devin Rushing and I'm a Army medevac pilot. My channel covers Army aviation topics and just general aviation topics as a whole. So if that's something you're interested in, give my channel a subscribe, give the video a like. Now on to the video. So by now you guys have probably heard that the Army Aviation Branch will be making some significant cuts to Army aviation. MILPER message 25-388 was published on September 17th. And this was the official policy that the Army put in effect and basically spelled out how they were going to convene on this issue and reduce the aviation force. Now they're calling this the Aviation Talent Review Board is what they're calling it. What this really means is due to realignment in force structure throughout the Army, they've identified that we are overstrength on pilots and aviation billets as a whole. Now, if you go on and you read some articles from the Army Times and Task and Purpose, the number that has been thrown out in those articles is cuts up to 6,500 personnel that this may impact. Now, that number, 6,500, was not officially put in the MILPER, and that's directly from Army HRC, and I think that's what's important. So Army HRC is not saying that. I think these articles are just kind of mathing like what makes sense with the new force structure realignment, and they're saying that it could be up to 6,500 jobs. Now, what we're going to do in this video is walk through what the MILPER message actually says and how this panel and review board will work out, and then what you can expect over the course of the next 2 years. All right, for this talent review panel, they're reviewing the populations for commissioned officers and warrant officers. Now, for the commissioned officer side, they're going to be reviewing year groups 20 through 25, grades of 01 through 03, and they're reviewing Apache pilots and Black Hawk pilots. Now, when you get to the warrant population, they're reviewing year groups 22 through 24, Black Hawk pilots and Apache pilots, and this will only affect the untracked community. So if you're a warrant officer and you're already tracked, they're not going to consider you in this talent review panel. Now, the MILPER message did not mention any cuts to the enlisted personnel, but due to the force structure realignment, that may come in the future. But for the purposes of MILPER 25-388, it didn't make any mention of enlisted personnel. Okay, so the way this panel is going to actually work is they're taking unit level feedback at the company level. And what does that look like? So that's the company commander giving their own opinion and feedback from what they get from their commissioned officers and their warrant officer population. Who wants to be retained in Army aviation? Who's open to a transition or even a separation? Because we don't really even know how this is all going to end as far as retention and separation. That list gets compiled. It makes its way to the battalion. That battalion commander is going to basically submit the list from the flight companies. And that list is going to make its way to the review panel. The president that presides over this panel will be a brigadier general, some colonels, and some CW5s. They will review this list, and they will create basically an order of merit. Now that will be based on unit level feedback, and that will also be based on OMPF files. And for those of you who do not know what an OMPF file is, that is your permanent file in the Army. So all of your evaluations, all of your awards that you've ever gotten, badges, or derogatory remarks, you know, hopefully nobody's going through that, but that will be in your OMPF file. And they will view it through a system called ASBS 2.0. And basically what that does is it takes your entire file and it puts it into kind of like a bulletized format that's you can look at really quick and see top blocks, awards, and like derogatory remarks. It will be in that ASBS 2.0. That panel will then create that order of merit list to validate it, and that will then go to HRC. HRC will then review that, create like an order of merit, and create a cut line. Everybody above that cut line will be retained in Army Aviation. Everybody below that cut line will either be transitioned to a different branch or separated. Okay, so what happens when this talent review panel concludes? How are we going to get the results? So once it concludes, these results will not be released publicly. In other words, they're not going to come out in a MILPER message where you can download and see if you're on it or not. What's going to happen is HRC is going to send these down to the unit levels, so your brigades, battalions, and companies will eventually get these results. Now, the people that are going to be retained and even the people that are going to be separated and transitioned to another job will probably be called into some type of closed door conversation and be given the result. Now, when can you expect this? Well, we're kind of getting into the realm of speculation at this point because it doesn't exactly say when these results are going to be given to the populations under review. But my best guess is probably mid to end November. And then after that, you'll be informed. And then after that, I would expect HRC will start making phone calls to the people that have been identified for separation or reclass, and start working that process to get them reclassed in their new military AOC or MOS. Now, I would expect those phone calls from HRC to probably happen. My best guess is maybe February, March timeframe, and then probably go to your formal training summer, winter of next year. Now let's talk about what I would be concerned with if I was the population under review. I think that's only fair for this video. So if I were in the shoes of a young warrant officer or RLO being reviewed in this talent review panel, first, I'd be pretty scared just because, you know, it seems like you have your future set out for you. You've made it through flight school, you've made it through progression, and now, you know, you've entered the Army with hopes and dreams only to be welcomed by this MILPER message coming out. So what now, right? Well, I would have two immediate concerns. Concern number one would be, okay, if I don't make the retention, can I separate, or am I going to be forced into a reclass? That would be concern one. And the MILPER message doesn't exactly answer that. It says separation or reclass. So it kind of leaves it open to where, like, it may not be an option. You may have to reclass. Now, that's my number one. That'd be my number one concern. My second big concern, and this is a big one, is most of the people in this talent review panel are under the 10-year ADSO. So if you're going to be reclassed into a different MOS, do you still have to adhere to that 10-year ADSO, or does that ADSO get dropped at all? Or are, because you came into Army aviation expecting to at least be an aviator for 10 years. And at this point, maybe you got 1 or 2 years knocked off. So now you got to go spend 8 years being a motor pool chief or a targeting officer for a field artillery unit. No offense against those guys, if that's what you want to do, but that's simply not exactly what a pilot wanted to do when they entered the Army and then got forcefully reclassed to that job. So I don't think it's probably something someone's too excited about doing if they have to spend the rest of their ADSO doing that job. That would be my 2 concerns. Now, if you can separate, if that is an option given to you, and that's a big if because the MILPER message doesn't say if that's going to be an option. It says it might be an option. If that is an option for you and you're out of flight school at this point and they want to separate you and you want to remain in aviation, the best thing that you have going for you is you're eligible for the restricted ATP. What does that mean? Well, to summarize it, and I could talk about the restricted ATP for hours, but to summarize it in a few seconds, the restricted ATP is for graduates of a military flight school. Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, you got it. If you're watching this video, you have a 90% chance that you probably qualify for the restricted ATP. So what does that mean? Well, if you only had civilian flight school training, you have to accumulate at least 1,500 hours before going to the airlines. That's a regular guy that has only had civilian flight training. But if you graduated from a military flight school, you only need 750 hours to be hireable by the airlines. So this is your golden ticket. Now it really comes down to, is the airlines currently hiring restricted ATP? And I can't answer that question for you. Now I know about a year to 2 years ago, they were hiring restricted ATP. It kind of comes in waves, but I would immediately look into that. And then I would also immediately look into getting your PPL, getting your IFR fixed wing, and getting your multi-engine, and start leveraging and positioning yourself to apply for regional airline jobs under the restricted ATP. You fly for the regionals for 1 to 2 years, and then you transition to the legacy airlines, and you're going to be flying for United, Delta, American, making a shit ton of money, laughing at guys like me after you take us to God knows where deployment and you see us getting off in uniform. Now, I do want to take a moment to just say, like, I really hate this for the population going through that right now. It's not easy, and I know that there's probably a lot of anxiety going through our community right now. That being said, this is a huge change in Army aviation. With the R-struck happening, which is the force structure or realignment of the cabs happening. It's been a long time coming. They've been talking about this for, I think, like the last 5, 6, 7 years. God knows, maybe 10 years. And we are seeing it take effect at the units currently. The medevac, that's my wheelhouse. We are going from a 15-ship company to a 12-ship company, and we're also being taken out of the GSAB and put into the Air Assault Battalion. And that's just in our company alone. And if you do the math, a platoon is 3 helicopters. So that's an entire platoon that's just going to go away. And that is across the Army, and that's in medevac only. So there's a ton of other effects that are happening through every single cab across the Army right now. Now, why couldn't the Army foresee this coming? I can't answer that. I mean, it's kind of annoying that it kind of seems like this is a knee-jerk reaction to something that's kind of been on the horizon for a while now. But again, those types of decisions are made way beyond me. And then obviously, like in these videos, I'm speaking from Devin Rushing standpoint, just from my civilian opinion outside of the military. These are the opinions of my own. Now, one thing I do want to say is that it seems like we can't get a morale win in Army aviation. I think since I've come into Army aviation, there's just been just black eye after black eye after black eye. Whenever I came in, the whole COVID thing had just happened, and we were releasing a lot of experienced aviators due to them not wanting to take the emergency use only vaccine. So they refused to do that, and a lot of them held to that, and they didn't want that, and they were transitioned out of the military. And even though that was kind of like something they had personal going on, it just didn't help the cohesiveness in the good order and morale of the units at that time due to that like forceful push out of those experienced aviators. There was that. There was also the time and grade reset. That was just a morale killer for, I know, a lot of the warrant community. Credentialing assistant was reduced from 4,000 to 1,000, and several other things. And then we have this. So it just seems like we're constantly getting beat up, and we're constantly kind of like, it seems like a lot of times where like our higher ups are kind of eating our own, you know? So that is unfortunate, but I don't want to stay in the doom and gloom. I want to keep everybody motivated out there. My channel is about learning and inspiring future Army aviators and making this community as strong as we can. All right, guys, I hope you guys are way more informed now on the Army Aviation Talent Review Panel. I feel like they should just call it a force reduction board, but for whatever reason, that is the name that it is called, the Army Aviation Talent Review Panel. I hope you guys are far more informed on it now than you were coming into this video. I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you're thinking about it. If you're affected by it, maybe, you know, what are some things that could have been done better, or just any advice that you have to the community, or even future videos that you would like to see me make. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. So stay tuned till next time.